And welcome to this live edition of Coffee with Graeme on Amateur Sports TV. I'm your host, Graeme Forsyth. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are live on Facebook and YouTube right now at Amateur Sports TV. So if you guys want to follow us on any of our other social medias, check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and of course Facebook, as well as YouTube at Amateur Sports TV. But today we're going to be talking some football. Haven't talked football in a while here on the show. Since a little back here in 2020, we were talking football with two players, but we haven't had a chance to talk to an executive director, and that's who we'll be talking to today. Bill Johnson, executive director of Football Manitoba. He's came on some of our shows on Amateur Sports TV, but he's never been on Coffee with Graeme. Excited to have him on today, and we're going to be talking about the tackle football return to play protocols, as well as the non-contact return to play protocols in football for Football Manitoba. We're going to be talking about high school flag football as well, and we'll also be talking about the mega raffle that they got going this year called Split the Pot. So right now we bring in Bill Johnson, executive director of Football Manitoba. Bill, how are you doing on this fine, wonderful Tuesday morning in Winnipeg, Manitoba?
I'm doing great. How are you, Graeme?
I'm doing very good. Just finished class, actually. Excited to get this interview rolling here. Excited to talk about some protocols that you guys have decided to lay out this year so we can have a safe and wonderful season, hopefully, fingers crossed, for the foreseeable football season here in 2020.
Yeah, we've laid out some non-contact. We actually just finished a flag league, and we're starting a fall flag league now. And our tackle protocols are all available on our website as well. And a couple clubs are going down that road as well.
Great. So you said that you just finished a flag league. What flag league was that?
That was the one that we run with the Bombers, the Blue Bomber Futures flag league. It's actually called the Blue Bomber Futures Spring Flag League, but it actually ran into the fall, so it's a little bit different this year. But with COVID and everything else, but it was good. We had 850 kids or so playing flag football all summer long. No problems, following our protocols to keep kids safe, and everything went really, really well.
Sweet. So over 800 kids joining. It seems like the joy to play was still there, even though, we're going through these times with COVID. It's always nice to see that. So we're going to move into the tackle football protocols right away, the return to play protocols. And on your website, it said that you guys have had help determining these protocols from Sport Manitoba and the provincial government representatives. So how nice has it been to get support from people like Sport Manitoba and the provincial government representatives during this time to make this well-educated decision?
Oh, it's been essential. We couldn't do it without their support. Of course, it's for all of us. It's our first time going through a pandemic and trying to provide sport in that environment. So it's been critically important to have support from those groups.
Nice, nice. And reading the tackle return to play protocol, the summary document, you guys can check out the detailed document and the summary document as well at footballmanitoba.ca. I'm pretty sure it's .ca, as we do live in Canada, but
it's actually .com for our website.
It's .com. So it's .com, footballmanitoba.com. You can check it out there. It's both the summary and the detailed list laid out if you guys want to check it out. If we do miss some stuff here today, I apologize, because there's a lot to get into with it. But just speaking about the numbers first, 80 people max during any activity at a field. Provincial guidelines currently call for limits of 100 people at any outdoor event. But why did Football Manitoba think that this was the right call to go with 80 people instead of going with the max 100?
We had a task force actually that worked on this document, on these guidelines, and it involved people from amateur football, minor football. We had people from high school football here in Winnipeg as well. Thunder Bay falls under our guidance, and they were participating as well. And they all worked together on this. And they felt, due to the knowing and intentional violations of social distancing, which occur in football, of course, it's impossible to play football and stay 2 meters apart, that it was better to keep our numbers slightly smaller, due to the fact that the risk of transference is slightly higher. So that's why we decided to go with those numbers.
So with most of these rules that you guys have implemented in this return to play protocol document, is it all about, limiting as much risk as possible with all these things, because I know that you're cutting down quarter time. We'll get into that. But yeah, we'll get into that now. You're cutting down quarter time from 12 minutes to 9 minutes. So little things like this, I bet they go a long way to minimizing any risk possible.
Yeah, well, there's guidelines we received from Manitoba Health in terms of how long exposure one on one between two players is before it becomes a risk of transference of the COVID virus. So that's why we did a lot of math and figuring out how long these, especially as an example, an O lineman and a D lineman who are face to face for the whole game, that time adds up, and we had to keep that time, total time under 15 minutes. So that's where that comes from. We made sure that we added it all up, and we did everything we could. As you said, it's all about mitigating risk while trying to stay true to the integrity of the game. And as of right now, we haven't cleared any of our leagues for gameplay, but people are being cleared for, if they want to do scrimmages within their own teams and things like that, they can do that. So there is a return to football happening right now, and we're hoping to have gameplay return soon.
And you're saying that you're hoping to have return gameplay happen soon. Is there a date in mind right now that you guys want to get this done, or is it all up in the air right now for when you're going to make the call exactly when these leagues are going to return?
Yeah, there's no date in mind. It's all based on what's happening, and as you know, these things tend to change day to day. So our document is very organic. It's we've already made some revisions to it as we went. Our group sizes were smaller, and they've increased to 80 now because we felt that that was a safe move to make. There's a couple other changes we've made in the document, just smaller things as well. So there's going to be revisions throughout. But before we move on to the next phase 3, which would be a return to gameplay, we need to see that. First of all, group sizes need to increase because a tackle football game, 12-a-side tackle football game, involves a lot of people. So we have to make sure that we're okay with that, and the province is okay with it, so that it's safe for all involved.
Yeah, for sure. And just getting into some of the changes that you guys have in the document right now that are going to change rules on the field, and a lot of rules like no huddles allowed, no press coverage allowed. On defense, teams are not allowed more than 4 players on the D line instead of the usual 7 players. No tight ends allowed at the line of scrimmage. No two-way players allowed. And of course, linemen must wear visors and splash guards. So, getting into the splash guards and the visors in just a minute with the linemen, both offensive and defensive. But, I feel like this is uncharted territory where, we've never seen anything like this, where there's not going to be able to be tight ends on the line of scrimmage. There's, going to be less blockers as well. So, how do you think this will affect the play calling and how it will affect the formations that coaches will run with their game plan when return to play happens with football?
Well, first of all, we're hopeful that these changes, these modifications, won't have to last very long. That we'll get to the point where it's safe to return to a more traditional type of game. Uh, I think that coaches are going to be creative, and to be perfectly honest, I am not the technical guy who comes up with these kind of rule modifications and things. We have a group of coaches who came up with these things, and they thought that having these sort of modifications was better than having no tackle football, which was the other alternative. So I think that it's important to note that we tried. I know the mandate of this group was to try and stay as true as possible to the integrity of the sport of football. We don't want to make radical changes so it doesn't even look like football anymore, because at that
Right.
point, what's the point? What are we trying to do here? So it's important to note that people worked very hard and put a lot of effort into maintaining the integrity of the game, and I think they've done a pretty good job with that. Some of these changes, I mean, people are going to have to be creative. They're going to have to think outside the box a little bit in terms of having no tight ends, limited down linemen on the defensive side, and things like that. But I think that for a short period of time, people can do that, and then we'll get back to a more traditional style of play, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, for sure. And it will be odd to see if this somehow does carry on and we don't get return to the normal style of football where we do have a normal set of D linemen, O linemen, and as well as tight ends allowed at the line of scrimmage. It'll be kind of odd to see that from a fan's perspective, and I bet from a player's perspective and a coach's perspective as well. But getting into the lineman rules now, that they have to wear visors and splash guards, and in the document, and this makes sense, that splash guards will eliminate drops of sweat from getting out of helmets, And I noticed that other players are allowed to use non-medical masks rather than the shields. So, do you think that the linemen having to wear the visors and splash guards makes the most sense instead of having everyone having to wear them?
It's a matter of, once again, it's that time. It's keeping it the close proximity under 15 minutes with another individual. So if I'm a tackle and I'm blocking the same defensive end the entire game, we want to make sure that we are protecting those two players if one of them happens to be contagious. So that's where that comes from. We don't see that as often. Even if you're a defensive back, for instance, a corner covering the same receiver the whole game, proximity is not the same. They're not in close contact. Whereas those two linemen, they're face to face, inches apart for most of the plays throughout the entire game.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like, yeah, it's the right call for them to be wearing those because they are the ones that are basically in each other's faces for the whole game. So it's definitely a good call in my opinion there. But just talking about the designated responsible person that will be chosen for each club. How will this person be chosen? Will it be just discussions among each coaching staff, or will they have to go through this special process to, register as this responsible person? How will that look?
Well, that's up to the teams themselves to decide, either the school or the club.
Yeah,
We're letting them choose that. We've recommended that they don't pick a coach because coaches, of course, already have a pile of responsibilities, and we don't want to add to that by telling them now you also have to be aware of how close your players are when they're getting water and things like that. So we've asked that they try and find someone else. It's similar to the same concept when teams have a team manager, something like that,
yeah,
or teams that travel have a chaperone. It's just another job, and that person will be the one who kind of oversees the COVID protocols. And we've actually had on our flag teams, we already have people doing that quite often. There'll be a head coach, and then the assistant coach is in charge of COVID protocols, and they're just telling the kids to space out and things. And we're usually talking in flag. Sometimes we're talking about younger kids. We're talking about kids as young as like 7, 8 years old. So it's a lot of reminding. It's like herding cats in a lot of ways to get them to space out properly and do those things. But we saw success with that over the summer with our flag league, and I don't think it's going to be a difficult thing for tackle teams to adjust to.
yeah, for sure. If 7 and 8 year olds can do it, I'm sure that the older kids can do it as well. Right now, Bill Johnson, Executive Director of Football Manitoba, joining me. We've been just outlining some of the rules that will be in play right now for the return to play protocol and tackle football, and a lot of rules that right now we want to see, kind of phased out as things get along because they do change the game quite a bit in a way, but it's all about keeping people safe right now. So we're going to continue, Bill, to outline the document, the summary of the return to play protocol for tackle football. We're going to get into the non-contact protocol, return to play protocol, in just a bit after we get finished with this, and then we'll be moving on to some other stuff as well. But tackle football players, I read this in the document as well, the summary, that tackle football players can't play any other sport than football if they choose to play football. So how do you think this might affect registration numbers, and how tough do you think that this choice will be for individuals?
Well, that's one of the things that was slightly modified. So we're allowing people can play tackle football and another sport, providing the other sport is also following a provincial sport body's return to play protocols, sanctioned protocols. So as long as, if, for instance, if a kid wants to play hockey and he's following their protocols closely, and he wants to play football, he could do that. Um, Once again, we're not cleared for gameplay yet, so registration is not as much of an issue. What we're seeing now mostly is our schools and clubs. Some are doing skills camps, for instance, things like that. We don't have anyone who's actually running any in-house leagues right now. I don't know if that'll happen. One of the problems we have is this all came together. The province, I understand, Manitoba Health is very busy with a bunch of other things with a pandemic going on in the province, and sport was a lower priority, so things kept getting pushed back, and we didn't actually get this clearance until end of August, beginning of September. And as you know, in this province, we have a very very short season before snow comes.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that people will take us up on gameplay until the spring. So it may be March or April before we're actually looking at gameplay because it's hard to play in February outside.
Yeah, for sure. And it's never fun to be playing outside in that -40 weather, especially here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. But moving on into, the scheduling, I know that there's a chance that there's going to be a bubble. I read that if and when Football Manitoba's return to play enter stage 3, teams may merge with other teams to form a bubble of 150 people. This bubble will not change in 2020. So, how close are we to entering stage 3? You hinted that gameplay might be, postponed until, the spring, so March and April.
Yeah, I don't. We haven't even had discussions about phase three at this point. We've been trying to help some groups get into phase two right now, so we haven't even looked at expanding that bubble. We have very few clubs and schools who have elected to even enter phase two at this point. A lot of people are just choosing to hold off until the spring because of the lateness in the season.
Right. So we're not really sure how this bubble will look like yet because there's a lot of teams that are unsure, and we're not even really close to entering stage 3 right now, if I'm reading that correctly.
That's correct.
Yeah, for sure. So, just moving into the screening of COVID-19, the screening tool that you guys will use before each team event, and it's going to be for every player before. I'm assuming they're going to be entering in. They're just going to be answering questions for a screening tool that are going to be like, have you, been outside the province for in the last 14 days? Have you been in contact with anyone outside the province for the last 14 days? Or are they just going to be simple questions like that?
Yeah, it's actually the screening tool that the province has put forward to all members of society. So we're just using theirs. We've linked to it, and we've actually used their tool exactly. And that's what we use throughout our flag season. The flag season is the only one I have to compare it to because that's the only one we've run since COVID happened, and it worked very well. We just asked that parents and kids make sure they go through that screening tool before they showed up at the field, and then they had to verify to their responsible person on their staff that, yeah, I did it, and then the coach would mark them down. The other thing that's critically important is that we keep attendance, that we know exactly who's there. So if ever, it hasn't happened yet, and knock on wood, we're hoping it doesn't, but if there's ever a positive case at a football field, we know exactly who was involved. So the province can call us on a Tuesday morning and say, hey, Monday night there was a positive case at such and such a field. Can you tell me who was there? And we can produce a list instantly because we've monitored exactly who's there in attendance at that field.
Great. So you're taking all the right steps to ensuring that you're covering all the bases. That's great. And in a time like this, it's so important to be covering all your bases and being extra cautious. So I'm assuming that it's not just going to be players that have to go through the screening test, but it's going to be spectators, medical staff, and coaching staff have to follow this protocol as well.
Yeah, anyone in attendance.
Anyone in attendance. Okay, sounds good. Moving on to equipment, fitting, and field equipment now. Reading this, that only a maximum of 15 people, including those fitting and dispensing equipment, may be in the facility at one time. These individuals must always practice physical distancing. So, out of these 15 people, are they going to consist of players, the staff that are in charge of fitting the equipment, and anyone else that is involved in the process?
Yeah, I think that 15 is a pretty generous number. I don't think we'll ever even get that high, to be honest. I think it'll probably be a coach, a parent, and a kid at most, and a player rather, trying on the equipment. Basically, what we're encouraging there is to limit the number of people because, of course, indoor spaces are a higher risk, and we're aware of that, of transference. And so instead of traditionally the coach will come and he'll put those shoulder pads right on that kid and check it out. Instead of that, we're asking that they actually maybe put the shoulder pads down on the table, all the equipment laid out on a table, kid tries it all on, coach can check it out, or the equipment person can check it out from 6 to 8 feet away, and maybe it's the parent who makes sure that things fit snug and can check for all the sizing and everything else because they live in the same household anyway. So we're just trying to decrease the amount of contact time between those two individuals.
Great. And yeah, it's all about reducing, time spent out there. It's all about reducing, contact time as well. And it seems like you guys are taking the right steps to do that. And just one more thing before we move on into the non-contact return to play protocol, but just the clarity that you guys have. And it seems like there's going to be signs on the fields, marking areas as well for participants only, stuff like that. How important do you think it is, and just the team that you've had that's come up with this list, to be as thorough as possible in a time like this, being as clear as possible with parents, medical staff, players, and coaches, and everyone involved at the football field?
Oh, it's really important, and a lot of times it's just a matter of a reminder. So we had the signs up at our flag fields when people arrived, and it's, I mean, it may seem silly. It's a sign that says, "Hey, practice social distancing. Stay 6 feet apart," and it shows two little stick figures standing 6 feet apart. And it seems like something we've heard 10,000 times in the last 6 months, but sometimes it's just that reminder when two parents are sitting there watching their kid play and they realize, hey, you know what? They look over the sign and realize, hey, we're sitting only 2 feet apart, and then you see them move and things like that. So it's just little reminders. And another sign we put up that just says, hey, remember, um, practice good hand hygiene, wash your hands,
Yeah.
things like that. We have sanitizer available on site, liters and liters of sanitizer available on site, so people can make sure if they can't get to a washroom with soap and water or a sink with soap and water, they can still do that. And they're just reminders, things to keep people on top of this sort of thing, because it's all as Dr. Rusin keeps stressing through the province all the time. It's the fundamentals. If we practice the fundamentals, then hopefully we're back to normal society, and a more normal society sooner rather than later.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's a very good saying, is the fundamentals, are probably the most important thing. Just paraphrasing that, in my opinion, I think that the fundamentals are the most important thing in anything that we do, because it builds those building blocks. And then we have successes down the road if we, practice those fundamentals in good nature. But just talking about the clarity aspect of things, I read that it says when possible, fields will have designated entrance and exit points. So, reading that, is that mean that some fields won't have designated entrance or exit points, or will all these fields be supplied with these designated entrance and exit points?
We're doing that in every instance that's possible, and to this point, we haven't found a field that we can't do that with. The problem is that some of our fields, you can, I mean, it's a football field, and sometimes it's in an open space, and people can approach it. We're not asking teams or clubs to go out and buy fencing to put around their field or anything like that. We're just saying have a designated spot where people can come in and another designated spot where people can leave, so that they don't have to cross in close proximity if that's required. Most of our fields, it's not an issue, to be honest, because they have such massive amounts of space. It's not a problem. But if they don't and they can't do that, then we're asking that, hey, maybe instead of having two entrances and exits, make one an entrance and one an exit.
Right, awesome. And we're gonna move away from the tackle football return to play protocols now. I do want to move into the non-contact things as well as the high school flag football side of things, but it seems like connection is a bit shaky right now. I don't know if it's on my side or if it's on your side, but if we end up, running into some more connection problems, we'll probably, add some more onto this interview. But I just want to talk about the split the pot first here, the mega raffle for 2020. Just before we get into anything else, if we're able to, if connection holds up, what exactly is split the pot, the mega raffle for 2020?
Well, the last few years we've done a mega raffle, but we did it with we had prizing and paper tickets where our players would anyone who's a member of Football Manitoba could go out and sell these tickets, and then we would give 70% of the proceeds went right back to that individual and their football club. So, for instance, if you're a St. Vital Mustangs kid, you could sell these tickets, and the prizes were cars and trips and Grey Cup tickets and things like that. This year, we're taking a little bit of a different approach with the way the world is kind of going right now. So the tickets are all virtual. So people are assigned an ID number, and you can buy those tickets online through Funding Change, and the prize will be essentially a split pot, so they get a percentage of the revenue rather than a prize. They're getting cash, which is always nice as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I did read that on the site. The winner gets 40%. So what happens to that other 60%?
That most of that goes right back to the seller's organization. So once again, we're selling it. This is all being done through our clubs and schools. So if people want to purchase those, they can actually go right to contact any of our clubs, any member club or school, and that information is all available on websites, and you can find it there and contact them. and then that money would stay with their football program. So maybe it's used to buy them new helmets, or to keep the lights on at their football field, things like that.
Awesome. So it's all for a great cause. If you guys want to check that out, and if you guys want to get involved, you can visit footballmanitoba.com, or as Bill said, you can visit any of the clubs and their websites as well to purchase tickets. And the deadline is Monday, November 16th at 9 a.m. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. So be sure to get your tickets before then. Monday, November 16th at 9 a.m. is the cutoff deadline. It goes to a great cause. If you want to help out some, great, football communities here in Manitoba and in Winnipeg as well, you can go visit footballmanitoba.com to get your tickets now. And you can also visit, like Bill said, the other, any club website as well that is involved in this. So it seems like connection has kind of fixed itself here. It seems like it was just a little bump in the road there when you buffered, but we're going to get into the non-contact football return to play protocols now, and these are fairly the same. It's fairly the same idea, but just going into some of the essential things that I found there. And once again, if we don't cover anything, if you guys want to see the full protocol, you guys can visit footballmanitoba.com, and they got the tackle football return to play revised protocol, as well as the non-contact football return to play protocols as well. But just getting into the rules for players first, it says that high fives, handshakes, and close contact celebrations are not permitted. A warning will be given for the first team offense, then an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for a second offense, and the game will be called if there is a third offense for a team. So would a third offense look like a forfeit if there was a third offense in a game?
It would. We played dozens and dozens of games already in our flag league this summer, and we never had an instance of that. Never got to that point. It's just it's a hard and concrete reminder to people that, hey, this is important. We have to follow these things because, well, two things: we want to keep people safe, and secondly, if we're not following these things, then the province has the authority to come in and shut us down if they feel we're an at-risk activity, and we want to keep people as safe as possible. So we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And as you said, it seems like teams are reacting to this very well. You think, putting out rules as, thorough and pretty much direct as this, it's like if there's a first offense, warning will be given, then things will get worse with an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. For a second offense, and then the game will be called for a third offense. Do you think that, being thorough, as we talked about with the signs and clarity as well, is so important at this time and for people to follow rules?
Yeah, for sure. And it's been really interesting watching some of the celebrations the kids come up with rather than the traditional high fives and chest bumps and things. You see kids, they stand like 6 feet apart and they stick their feet out and they tap toes on their shoes and things like that. Just kind of fun little things they can do to celebrate without getting within that 2 meter spacing. So it's kind of a cool thing.
Sweet. And that's awesome. Always getting creative with the game as much as they can in these tough times. It's always fun to, and to probably see it, hearing about it too, just seeing those celebrations. And moving into this, I found this interesting because players in tackle football are allowed to wear these, but not in flag football, and that's gloves. So why not allow the gloves in flag, but in tackle?
Well, initially we didn't allow gloves just because of the difficulty in sanitizing them. Kids didn't want to put hand sanitizer on their gloves to sanitize them because they thought the gloves might lose the tackiness and they wouldn't be able to catch as well. And those gloves can get very expensive, so they didn't want to risk ruining them. So with our spring summer league, we didn't allow gloves at all. For our fall league, we're actually allowing the kids now in flag to wear gloves. That's the one rule we've made a change into going forward here. So kids can do it as the weather gets colder, and there's a we've had it brought to our attention that there's a little bit of a safety risk in tackle football with gloves as well. Speaking to some of the coaches on the task force, that if you're a lineman and you're not wearing those gloves, your hands can get pretty mangled and things. They can help out with that. So that's why gloves were allowed in tackle right from the beginning, and they will be allowed in flag now. But we are requiring people to sanitize them before and after.
Great. And yeah, sanitizing is probably the most important thing throughout this whole process because it does eliminate a lot of the germs and the virus, being transmitted as well, for sure. And players I read this too, that players must bring their own water bottle marked with their name. So makes sense, perfectly clear. Sharing water bottles is prohibited. And I'm just wondering if you think this might cause problems because there might not be a clear way to monitor this because refs are going to have to be worrying about the game. But is there going to be someone that will be in charge of monitoring this directly? And if so, who would that be? Would it be just more of the coaching staff that's monitoring it?
Yeah, the coaches take care of that, and we saw teams in the summer league that would show up. Someone would stop and pick up a case of bottled water on the way to the field, just in case the kid forgot their water bottle, just to discourage that sharing. I know my daughter played this summer as well, and her team manager just kept a case of water in his car. So if ever they got to a field and the kid didn't have a water bottle, he'd write their name on the bottle and hand it to them, just to make sure that it's not an issue. We don't want people to forget their water and then a matter of convenience grab their buddy's water bottle. So that's why we have responsible people who take care of that sort of thing.
Awesome. And yeah, that's so responsible. Of course, always being prepared, and in a time like this, preparation is such a key thing. So moving into one of the things that I noticed from the rules for the teams is that teams must ensure that hand sanitizer is available at all times for their team. So teams without hand sanitizer will be unable to play the evening and or the event and will be asked to leave the site. And, hand sanitizer, of course, it should be provided, but what if coaches, can't find any hand sanitizer and they can't supply their own? Will Football Manitoba help out with that?
Yeah, for our in-house flag league, we provided 100% of the hand sanitizer used. So we made a bulk purchase of hand sanitizer, and every team had a couple bottles of it. So and if they needed more throughout the year, we just made sure that we kept that stocked up for them. So there was never a reason for people not to have it because it was supplied,
Yeah, great.
and
So
it
it's
will be in the fall league as well.
awesome. So supplying it, making it easy, making it as simple as possible, mitigating risk as well as the contact, and making it as time friendly as possible out there. All the great things that Football Manitoba is doing to ensure the safety of all parties involved. And if you guys want to check out the return to play revised protocol for tackle football as well as the return to play protocol for non-contact football, you can check it out at footballmanitoba.com. Moving into the high school flag football now, and I played flag football personally for 8 years since when I was 9 to 17 years old, and I never was aware that there was high school flag football. So I'm assuming that this is a new thing that Football Manitoba is introducing this year.
Well, it's actually be built right into our fall flag league that we're running through the clubs. We have a high school division, U18 division for high school age kids, and then a U16 division for junior varsity kids. We've just built it right in to allow these kids an opportunity to play. And I know there's another group in town, Pro Prep, they're called. We're sanctioning them and endorsing their group as well, and they have a high school division, and then they also have divisions for kids who maybe are junior football aged, the 18 to 22-year-olds, and university age kids as well. They have divisions for them, and so they're running the same kind of thing. And that's DJ Lalama and Andrew Harris have partnered on that league, and we're sanctioning that and working with them to make sure that that's another opportunity available for those kids.
That's great. That's awesome. And getting to work with the man himself, Andrew Harris, a Winnipeg Blue Bombers legend, Grey Cup champion. That's awesome, as well as working with some other great people involved with the game of football. But why did you guys decide to introduce the game at the high school level at a time like this, even though you guys are incorporating it into your fall program? I know that with high schools, they're from every part of the city. There's some high schools outside of the city as well, like I'm guessing that like Steinbach, places like that, Lorette. Why introduce the game at a high school level in a time like this?
Well, there's no other opportunities right now. It's not that we're introducing it right now. We've always had that opportunity. We're just promoting it a little bit more because those kids don't really have an opportunity for. There's not going to be flag or tackle leagues rather this fall. We understand that kids may have an opportunity to practice and train, but if they want to play, they're going to have to find different alternatives, and that's one. Our flag league is one of those alternatives.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Providing those alternatives for people that won't have a chance to play flag this fall, and that's awesome. Just talking about how earlier we were talking about how there was over 800 people at that one flag event, and just talking about how I always hear it too, and I know that you've spoken about this before of how the game is growing in Manitoba, and it's one of the fastest growing sports in Manitoba, which is flag football. But how do you think this will continue to grow the game in Manitoba for the sport of not only flag football, but maybe opening some opportunities for people to try tackle football as well?
Yeah, that's actually one of the primary purposes of our fall league here is to get people introduced to flag football, to the sport of football through our club system, which already exists, our tackle club system. So a kid, for instance, can sign up and they could go to the Transcona Nationals, or they can go to the Charleswood Broncos or the Fort Garry Lions, and they can actually play flag through that club. And then, for some of these kids, it may lead to relationships with their teammates. It may lead to the fact that they like being involved at that club. And maybe they decide to try tackle football in 2021 when hopefully our leagues are running in a more traditional sense than they are right now. And so we're hoping that those relationships build. As you know, the greatest way to recruit kids to a sport is through other kids. That's kids want to play with each other. They have fun with it. They like to play with their buddies. So we're hoping that that'll contribute to that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's about the people and if you can get if someone that plays flag football, and there's that word to mouth aspect of things, it's going to make it a lot easier for the game to grow. And I think that's an awesome thing that you guys are doing. So just a couple more questions here, and then we'll be done with the interview. But just how many games and how many divisions will be run with the high school flag football league?
Our fall flag league will be a guarantee of at least 12 games. It could be as many as 14 or 15, depending if you go to a championship game or not. And that's true. That's not just high school age. That's true. We have a U10 division, so 8-year-olds all the way up through high school. And for the pro prep league, I'm not sure what their structure is. You would have to go to their website and contact them directly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. And will there be playoffs, or is it just going to be a regular season?
No, there will be playoffs for sure. We'll have the playoffs will probably be a doubleheader with quarters and semis, and then a championship game will occur the next day. We're looking at some cool things. We're gonna have some of the games on Friday nights under the lights at a couple of our clubs that have those, because that's always a cool thing. We did that with our summer league. We had the championship games on in evenings at 7, 8 o'clock at night with the lights on the field, and it's a cool thing. Those who play tackle football know that feeling, but our flag players, some of them have never had that experience, so it's kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah, and what an experience that would be to play under the lights. I know that back when I played flag football, we'd have some season openers at the stadium at IGF Field, and we would play some night games, and we would play under the lights, and it was such a cool feeling. It feels like you are in the pros, and I think that's an awesome thing that you guys are trying to incorporate, making it feel like even though this isn't pro football, these guys get that feeling. That's an awesome thing, Bill. So thanks so much for joining me today on this edition of Coffee with Graeme. It's great to hear some positive news. Hopefully we'll get some things sorted out. Hopefully this virus gets sorted out soon, and we get to return to normal tackle football in the foreseeable future. But if that does happen, we're always happy to have you on the show again, and any of our shows here on Amateur Sports TV.
All right, thank you very much, Graeme. I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. Have a good one, Bill. Stay safe out there. Hey.
Thanks, you too.
Awesome. And Bill Johnson, Executive Director of Football Manitoba, joining us on this edition of Coffee with Graeme. And that's going to do it for this edition of Coffee with Graeme. Once again, if you guys want to check out these protocols in place for Football Manitoba for the 2020 season, you can check it out at footballmanitoba.com. They got the tackle football return to play revised protocols on the site there. And they also got the non-contact protocols for football, so for flag, on their site as well, if you guys want to check it out at footballmanitoba.com. And of course, to split the pot, Mega Raffle 2020, the information is all there. We talked about that as well in today's edition of Coffee with Graeme, but you can also check that out at footballmanitoba.com, and as Bill said, at any of the club's websites as well. So before we let you guys go, we've been doing this on the show frequently now. I'd say I'd like to say I'm getting better at memorizing, but I'm really not. I still got my piece of paper with the list of all these great shows here on the Amateur Sports TV network. So just starting off with this show, the show you've been watching for over 40 minutes now, Coffee with Graeme. It airs every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 10:30 a.m. And if you guys want to see me talk to all sorts of personalities around the amateur sports world here in North America, you can check me out here on the network at Amateur Sports TV at 10:30 a.m. Tuesday and Thursdays. And this Thursday is our wrap up of season preview on the Winnipeg Avs, where I had a chance to sit down with Rachel Godfrey, editing something special for you guys for that season finale for the Winnipeg Avs on season preview. It's going to be a fun one, and we also got some other things in the works for Coffee with Graeme coming up in the future here. So stay tuned for any announcements on our social medias at Amateur Sports TV, of course, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we post videos on YouTube as well. But for updates, you can check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Amateur Sports TV. But enough with my show. We're going to talk about these other shows here on the ice with Theo Tuckdeluck, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. And for any pro sports fans, if you're sick of our amateur sports TV coverage, if you're sick of our amateur sports coverage, you can turn to pro sports here on the network on Amateur Sports TV. We've introduced this just a while ago now. It's been rolling nicely. It's Crunch Time with the Boys, weekdays at 9 p.m. So for all you pro sports fans, be sure to check that out. Then we got Between the Pipes with Mahith Gamage, Wednesdays. If you want to check out some great soccer coverage here on the show. And then watch for the new Prospect Show, the Rookie Show, World Softball TV, the Sask Sports Show. The first episode just dropped on the network, so if you guys want to check that out, be sure to check that out. It's with JD Hodden. And then we got the International Hockey Academy show coming to the network as well. So many great shows, so many great options for you guys here on the network. And of course, you can check it out all across our network at Amateur Sports TV. And that's going to do it for me. Graeme Forsyth, host of Coffee with Graeme, signing off. Remember, stay safe out there. Grab your cup of joe. Be sure to enjoy all our shows here at Amateur Sports TV. And until next time, I'll see you next time. Signing off, Graeme Forsyth, host of Coffee with Graeme. Have a good one.